Sometimes we think we know the people we love, until the day we realize we didn't know them at all. For Jamal Carter, that moment came 3 days after his father's funeral, standing in the garage of the man he thought he understood completely. Vernon Carter, a quiet mechanic, a simple man who fixed neighbors' cars and never asked for more than a thank you, was gone. Jamal held a ring of keys that felt heavier than they should. The old garage smelled of oil and dust, the air thick with memories. He'd put off cleaning it out, maybe because opening that door felt like saying the final goodbye. But that afternoon, as sunlight poured through the small, high windows, he decided to face it. 2 large canvas tarps in the corner caught his eye, draped carefully over something bulky. Probably old junkers, he thought. Maybe unfinished projects Vernon never got to complete. But when Jamal pulled those covers back, his entire world tilted. Beneath one tarp, a 1967 Shelby GT500 gleamed in perfect condition, burgundy paint reflecting light like glass. And next to it, a Ferrari 250 GT SWB, fire red, flawless, and impossibly rare. Jamal froze, his breath caught. His father, the small-town mechanic, had owned cars worth millions. Every assumption Jamal had about his father shattered in that single moment. These weren't just cars, they were secrets. And suddenly, Jamal wasn't just cleaning out a garage. He was unlocking the hidden life of a man he thought he'd known. Just 3 days earlier, Jamal had sat in the front pew of the small chapel, surrounded by soft hymns and the smell of lilies, trying to make sense of grief. Vernon Carter's funeral had been simple, just like the man himself. People said kind things, dependable, honest, hardworking. They spoke of a man who fixed cars for half what the dealership charged, who never complained, who lived quietly. But as Jamal listened, it felt incomplete. His father had been more than that, hadn't he? Sitting beside him, his 16-year-old son, Terrell, fought tears he thought made him weak, while 12-year-old Kesha clutched her sketchbook, tracing invisible lines on its cover. They were too young to understand how much their grandfather had shaped their lives. Jamal's sister, Diane, ever the organizer, already talked about the will, the property, the paperwork. Her husband stood quietly behind her, letting her lead as she always did. Uncle Bernard, Vernon's younger brother, sat in the back, openly weeping. The pastor spoke about rest, about faith, about eternal peace. But Jamal wasn't listening. His mind drifted to all the conversations he'd never had with his father, all the questions left unanswered. Vernon had died doing what he loved, working in his garage, his heart giving out at 68. Quick, the doctor had said, painless, but that didn't comfort Jamal. His father had died alone, surrounded not by family, but by tools and engines. That thought haunted him, and now, standing before those pristine cars, it felt like his father had been living an entirely different life, one he never shared. In the days that followed, Jamal moved between grief and confusion. The lawyer confirmed everything in the will, the house, the savings, the tools, all his, but she'd said something odd. Vernon had left a note, "Take your time with the garage." Jamal hadn't understood until now. The moment he stepped into that organized space, the walls lined with labeled tools, the notebook of meticulously written entries, he realized his father hadn't been just a mechanic. The leather-bound journal told a different story. Pages of handwritten notes, not just about repairs, but about acquisitions, provenance, auctions, and names like Sterling. His father had been involved in something far more sophisticated than neighborhood oil changes. Jamal found keys in the Ferraris, ignitions, tags in his father's careful handwriting. Shelby 1967 for Jamal. That message cut through his confusion like lightning. His father had meant for him to find these, meant for this moment. but the questions only deepened. Where had Vernon gotten the money? Why had he hidden it? And who was this Sterling he mentioned again and again in his notes? Jamal called his sister and uncle. When they arrived, their shock mirrored his own. The small-town mechanic's garage wasn't a workshop, it was a vault. And when Jamal picked up the phone and dialed the mysterious number written beside Sterling, the voice that answered changed everything. "Vernon's son. I wondered when you'd call. Your father was a remarkable man. We have much to discuss." The next morning, Jamal sat in a quiet downtown cafe, hands shaking around a cup of coffee. Across from him sat Sterling, a composed man in his 70s with silver hair, an expensive suit, and a calm authority that made the entire cafe seem smaller. "Your father wasn't just a mechanic," he said. "He was an automotive detective, the best I ever worked with." Sterling explained how he'd met Vernon decades earlier at an estate sale, impressed by his encyclopedic knowledge of rare cars. Vernon had a gift for tracing lost automobiles through history, connecting dots others couldn't see. Sterling had hired him as a researcher, a verifier of authenticity for collectors who spent fortunes chasing ghosts on wheels. For 20 years, Vernon quietly worked for Sterling's firm, locating, authenticating, and preserving some of the world's rarest vehicles. "Your father made more money than you'd ever guess," Sterling said softly. "But he never flaunted it, never left the garage, never left his community. His real life was here with you." Jamal sat speechless, tears threatening to rise. His father had built a fortune in silence, choosing integrity over luxury. "The Shelby and the Ferrari," Sterling continued, "were his legacy, his way of taking care of you without changing who he was." For the first time, Jamal understood Vernon's quietness hadn't been distance. It had been protection, humility, love expressed through work, not words. Sterling's words stayed with Jamal as he invited an appraiser, Lawrence Cunningham, to verify the cars. When Lawrence arrived, his reaction said it all: awe, respect, disbelief. "The Shelby alone could fetch 600,000, he said. "The Ferrari between 8 and 12 million. Those numbers didn't sound real. But there was one issue, a gap in the Ferrari's ownership history. Lawrence warned that without documentation from the missing years, questions might arise about legitimacy. That night, Jamal couldn't sleep. He sat in his father's garage, reading the journal again and again until a small note caught his eye. "Ferrari provenance research complete. Documentation filed in safe. Combination JKV 412. The next morning, he searched the garage until he found a hidden panel behind the workbench. Inside, a small safe. He entered the code: J for Jamal, K for Kesha, V for Vernon, 412, his own birthday. The door clicked open. Inside were stacks of cash, perfectly organized files, and a videotape labeled, "For Jamal if there are questions." That night, with his family gathered around Vernon's old television, Jamal pressed play. His father appeared on the screen, older, calm, and smiling. "If you're watching this," Vernon said, "someone's questioning the Ferrari. I want you to know the truth." For half an hour, he explained everything: the ownership dispute, the legal transfers, every document carefully accounted for. "These cars are legitimate," Vernon said. "They're yours, and Jamal, I'm proud of you, always have been." When the tape ended, the room was silent except for tears. For the first time, Jamal didn't just miss his father, he understood him. With the new documentation, Lawrence confirmed everything. The Ferrari's provenance was airtight, its value secure. Jamal faced a decision: keep the cars as symbols of his father's love or sell one to build a stable future. He sat with Terrell and Kesha, explaining everything honestly. Terrell, ever practical, said, "Grandpa wanted you to trust yourself." Kesha, thoughtful, whispered, "Maybe we keep one so we remember him." That was it, the balance. They would sell the Ferrari, keep the Shelby. Sterling helped arrange the sale, connecting Jamal with a collector named Charles Whitmore, one of the most respected names in the automotive world. When Jamal met him, Charles reviewed Vernon's meticulous records and said softly, "Your father was extraordinary." The negotiation began, and Sterling stood by Jamal's side, guiding him through a world of million-dollar deals. When the final price was agreed, $10.2 million, Jamal's hands trembled. His father's lifetime of quiet work had turned into generational security. As they drove home, Sterling looked over and said, "You handled that with grace. Your father would be proud." Jamal smiled through tears. He didn't feel like he'd just sold a car. He felt like he'd completed his father's mission, the final piece of a story that had begun decades earlier in that same humble garage. Days later, while sorting through Vernon's old clothes, Jamal found a box of letters, all addressed to him. Letters his father had written over the years but never sent. The first one was dated 15 years ago. "Dear Jamal, today you told me you got the teaching job. I wanted to say how proud I am, but the words didn't come. So I'm writing them here. Teaching is noble work, son. Don't ever let money make you doubt that." Jamal read letter after letter, his tears falling freely. Vernon had written through every stage of Jamal's life: Angela's illness, the kids' births, his own regrets. One letter read, "The cars I'm collecting, the investments I'm making, they're my way of saying what I can't say out loud. I love you. I'm proud of you. I want you to live free of fear." Every word filled the silence that had once stood between them. Vernon hadn't been distant. He just loved differently. Jamal gathered the letters into a binder with his father's journals, uniting the man's heart and his craft. In that moment, he realized Vernon's greatest legacy wasn't wealth. It was understanding, the bridge between generations built not by words, but by devotion, detail, and love that lasted beyond life. The Ferrari was gone now, sold, shipped, and safely placed in Whitmore's museum-like collection. But in Vernon's old garage, the Shelby remained polished to perfection, a living piece of memory. Jamal sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, and smiled. His father had left him more than cars. He'd left him a roadmap for living, work hard, stay humble, think ahead, love deeply. A week later, Jamal made a decision. He turned the garage into something new: Vernon's Legacy Workshop, a free program for neighborhood kids to learn car maintenance, life skills, and discipline. It wasn't just about engines. It was about purpose, connection, and carrying on a tradition of quiet strength. When the first group of students walked in, Jamal saw his father's spirit in every curious pair of eyes. He knew Vernon would have loved this, not the wealth, not the glory, but the legacy of giving back. And as the engine of that old Shelby roared to life for the first time, Jamal whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Because in the end, the real treasure wasn't hidden in a garage. It was the love that outlived the man who gave it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us. Sometimes, the quietest people leave the loudest legacies.